There's a version of you that never got to be a child, not because something dramatic happened overnight, not because there was a single moment you can point to and say, that's where it changed, but because slowly, quietly, you became the person who held things together. You stopped asking. You stopped breaking down in front of people. You learned to read the room before you even walked into it. You learned to make yourself smaller when the air got tense, to stay calm when someone else couldn't, to be the steady one, even when nothing inside you felt steady at all. And somewhere along the way, you stopped noticing that none of this was ever supposed to be your job. This video is about that, about the psychology of a child who grew up too fast, and why, even now, some part of you is still carrying weight from a house you haven't lived in for years. You probably don't remember the exact moment it shifted. There wasn't one. It was more like a slow accumulation. A morning you made breakfast for yourself because no one else did. An afternoon you stayed quiet so you wouldn't add to someone else's stress. A night you told yourself everything was fine because someone else needed to believe that, and you were good at it, better than anyone knew. You became the peacekeeper, the one who watched the room and adjusted, the one who noticed when someone's mood shifted and quietly changed your entire behavior to accommodate it. Not because anyone asked, because you understood without being told that this was what was needed. Psychologists call one version of this parentification. It happens when a child is asked, directly or indirectly, to manage emotions that aren't theirs to carry, to be steady when the adults around them couldn't be. But parentification isn't always dramatic. It isn't always visible. Sometimes it looks like a child who never cries at school because they've used all their emotion managing things at home. Sometimes it looks like a teenager praised for being so mature, so responsible, so wise beyond their years, as if that were a compliment and not a description of a burden. Sometimes it looks like you, quietly recognizing yourself right now. It's learning before you were ever taught that your feelings come last, that needing something is an inconvenience, that the safest version of you is the one who doesn't ask for very much. And so childhood didn't end with a bang. It ended grain by grain, like sand you watched fall through glass that you couldn't stop. And one day you looked up and realized the top chamber was empty, and you weren't sure exactly when it happened. Here is what was actually happening inside your brain during all of this. The brain of a child is not a finished product. The prefrontal cortex, the part responsible for emotional regulation, for long-term thinking, for managing stress, and making sense of complex social dynamics, isn't fully formed until your mid-20s. But your environment didn't wait. It handed you adult-sized problems and a child-sized nervous system and quietly expected you to manage. So the brain adapted. Developmental psychology describes what happens when a child realizes they cannot consistently rely on their caregivers for emotional support. The brain makes a quiet executive decision: stop expecting it. This is the beginning of what psychologists call the avoidant attachment pattern. The child learns not to signal distress, not to reach out, not to ask, because reaching out, historically, didn't reliably bring comfort. It sometimes brought burden or silence, or being told they were too sensitive, too needy, too much. So the brain rewires. It suppresses the signal. It learns to turn off the screen that says, "I need something." And this is the part that matters. The child doesn't stop needing. They never stop needing. They just become very, very good at not showing it. They learn to meet their own needs before anyone notices they have them, to preempt discomfort before it can be seen, to perform a kind of emotional self-sufficiency that looks from the outside like incredible strength. But internally, something else is happening. Psychologists call it split maturity. When emotional development is rushed, some parts grow far too early. Your ability to read people, your tolerance for pressure, your instinct to manage rather than feel. But other parts, the ones that needed safety and consistency to develop, stay frozen. The part that knows how to rest, the part that can receive care without guilt, the part that believes it is allowed to want things. Wise in some rooms, still a lost child in others. And maybe the most disorienting thing about it, you may not even notice the split. Because from the outside, you look composed, you look like you have it together. There's a mirror moment when the composed adult steps aside and what you see reflected back is a smaller, quieter version of yourself, still in there, still waiting, still hoping someone will finally ask how you're doing and mean it. Here is what psychology does not call you. It does not call you damaged. It does not call you broken. It does not call you too far gone to change. It says your nervous system adapted to pressure it was never designed to carry alone. Light doesn't push through stone because the stone is weak. It pushes through because something inside refuses to be contained. Think of a tree growing out of the side of a cliff. It doesn't grow straight. The conditions won't allow it. So it bends, it reaches, it grips whatever hard ground it can find, and it grows anyway. Full canopy, deep roots, completely alive. That is not a broken tree. That is a resilient one. And that tree is you. But here's the thing about a coat you've put on for so long you forgot you put it on. The hypervigilance, the self-reliance that never asks for help, the composure that never cracks in public. These feel like who you are. They are not who you are. They are what you learned to wear because the temperature required it. And coats, no matter how heavy, can be taken off. So where do you go from here? Not with a checklist, not with pressure to fix everything at once, but with 5 principles, each one rooted in psychology, that can begin to gently loosen what was tightened too young. Your hypervigilance is not your personality. Your self-sufficiency is not your soul. Your composure is not your character. They are strategies. Strategies your nervous system developed to survive a specific set of conditions. Neuroscience shows us that simply naming a psychological pattern loosens its unconscious grip on behavior. When you feel the urge to control everything, to fix what isn't yours to fix, to manage what no one asked you to manage, pause and say quietly to yourself, this is the strategy, not the self. That single distinction is where healing begins. Research on attachment repair tells us that the nervous system does not change through thinking. It changes through experience, through corrective emotional experiences, moments where the old pattern expects rejection and something different happens instead. That means letting someone help you with something small, accepting a compliment without immediately deflecting it, telling someone you're tired without rushing to add, but I'm fine. Not all at once, not with grand vulnerability, just incrementally, one small moment of receiving at a time, because your nervous system learned that support was unreliable, and the only way it unlearns that is by experiencing something different, slowly, repeatedly, safely. Principle 3. Understand why rest feels dangerous. Many people who grew up too fast carry a specific alarm. When things go quiet, when nothing is needed of them, instead of relief, they feel uneasy, restless, on edge, like the stillness itself is a warning. This is chronic stress adaptation. The nervous system spent so long in a state of readiness that it began to interpret calm as the pause before the next crisis. So it stays ready, even when there's nothing to be ready for. Understanding this is not the same as fixing it, but it is the necessary first step, because you cannot begin to rest if you still believe somewhere deep down that resting means something is about to go wrong. Rest is not negligence. Rest is not the thing that comes before disaster. Rest is what your nervous system was never fully taught it believed it had earned.